Going to go over elements of design, and we're going to review principles that help describe the way that you as an artist or you as a graphic design will piece together your layouts, your designs, whatever it may be. So I'm providing you with words that you can put into your toolbox to help describe the reason behind what you're doing. And the first one is balance. You're going to hear a lot about balance when you begin to design, get feedback, or listening to people who have been doing this for a while. I think it's something that's easy to understand, and so a lot of people will navigate towards using the word balance to help describe and critique and provide feedback for your design. But balance, it's the distribution of the visual weight of objects, colors, texture, and space. Remember that space can be a good thing. Space can be just as, or white space can be just as heavy as a color or an object or a texture. If the design was a scale, these elements should be balanced to make a design feel stable, and that's in a symmetrical balance. We can also have an asymmetrical balance, so you can see the difference between those two. We can also have a radial balance, but balance implies that the visual elements within a degree or within a design have a sense of relative weight. Visual balance works in much the same way as the scale or a balance beam, and we'll take a look at a visual of that here in a second. But when objects are of equal weight, then they are in balance. Large objects generally weigh more than smaller objects. Dark objects generally weigh more than light objects. Highly saturated objects generally weigh more than objects with less color. But several small items on one side can be balanced by one large object on the other. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like. So this top left one, we have small objects on the left and a large object on the right. We have a number and a higher contrast of colors on the left side of the balance beam, so it creates a sense of balance. Now on the right top picture, we can see that this is asymmetrically balanced. Is one more correct than the other? I don't think so. Especially in design, there's rules that we can play by, but it's okay to break the rules too. As long as you first understand the rules and understand the game, then it's fine to break it afterwards. Talked about the idea of radial balance. So that middle bottom picture, we can see that idea in a visual form. So we have one focal point and things kind of move outward from that center. And then the bottom right photo we have one large object on the left, we have two smaller objects on the right, but it still creates balance. Emphasis is another powerful tool that I think a lot of people might overlook. This is the part of design that catches the viewer's attention. Usually the artist will make one area stand out by providing contrast with other areas. The area could be a different size, color, texture, or shape. The idea of dominance comes into play. Dominance describes a situation where one element is more important or more noticeable than its surrounding elements. Size matters when it comes to emphasis. When you want something to be noticed, bigger is usually better. But again, contrast can also be key. For instance, an element of a very small text in a field of large text may stand out more just because of its size difference, or just because of the color difference. High color contrast creates emphasis as well. Opposites attract. The objective of contrast is to produce maximum visibility. Value contrast, black and white, is the strongest contrast in design. Color contrast can be effective, so bright colors attached to attract more attention than dull colors, but maybe not as strong as the black versus white contrast. Another one is when one shape is distinctly different from the other shapes in your design. That can create some contrast and emphasis. Color also stands out. So if we have something that's kind of standing out of the crowd, it'll be more dominant. Isolating an element, especially through effective use of positive and negative space or white space, can emphasize that element as well. So don't be afraid of negative space or white space. It can be a really powerful tool. So here are some examples that we can look at. So this middle one, we have kind of the idea of that high level of contrast, or one thing stands out. So we have this kind of orange color in a sea of green. We can have contrast between dominance between big versus small text as well. We have a high color contrast here. This top right photo is kind of an example of contrast a little bit, but we can also take a look at who the people are looking at to kind of help guide direction of our eye. And this brings us to movement. Especially when we talk about photography and deciding what's a good photo or setting up a good photo, movement is extremely important. This is the path that the viewer's eye will take throughout your design. Such movement can be directed along lines. Oftentimes you'll hear people say leading lines. Can also be directed across edges, shape, and color within your work of art. So we can look here, and we have one focal point, which is in the middle. And then we have these lines that kind of take us out throughout the rest of this photo. Pattern, we can see kind of this repetitive design. Here, that's just a simple example of what a pattern is. It's the path that the viewer's eye takes throughout the work of art. Repetition. Repetition works with pattern to make the work of art seem active. The repetition of elements of design creates unity within the work of art. Proportions. We can create a feeling of unity when all parts, so size, amount, or number, relate well with each other. So here's some examples. We can see the top three images kind of distribute pretty equally, where the bottom there's a division that's created because we're lacking the proper proportion. Rhythm is created when one or more elements of design are used repetitively to create a feeling of organized movement. I think this is really important in magazine layouts because you have words, you have different sections, you also have multiple stories within one magazine, and so developing that repetition within how the fonts that you choose, the headers that you choose, the colors that you decide to use, it was really important to create that feeling of unity. Okay, variety. Variety is the use of several elements of design to hold the viewer's attention and to guide the viewer's eye through and around the design. So we can take a look at some examples of unity and variety. Variety, we have different sizes, or we have different colors. And then when it comes to unity, it's a feeling of harmony between all the parts of the design, which creates a sense of completeness. And so once again, back to this photo, unity, same color, unity on the right, all the same sizes. So let's take a look at some examples of magazines, and I want you to think to yourself and use some of the words that we just went over to describe the layout. I think this one in particular really plays on contrast, also size. When it comes to symmetry, I think it may be asymmetrical. I think it may be a little heavy on the left. I think this one really works with the focal point. So I think the focal point is definitely either the eyes of Samuel Jackson or the gun, and our eye will move between those two focal points. As far as balance, we have a lot of words on the left, and we have a very strong picture on the right. Remember, when we talk about contrast, and the strongest contrast that you can create is black and white. So all those things, I think, play really well with each other to create a strong design. Here's an example of utilizing negative space or white space. Once again, we have that high contrast of black and white. When we talk about balance and asymmetry, I think the right side is definitely maybe a little bit more heavier, but I think some might argue that since we have such a strong negative space on the left, that it might balance it out. Here's another two-page spread. I think this kind of plays on symmetry very well. I think it's balanced very much so on the left and right. I really enjoy how that upper third does provide some contrast. So we have white that kind of mimics the sky or the sea, and then on the bottom we have a lot of color. This one I think plays with leading lines. So our eye is going to start on the left somewhere. I think it'd probably be around Wonderful Time, or the Wonderful Tolem, so that's the title. And so our eye is going to start there, and our eye is going to move to an area of high contrast, and our eye is going to follow that beach line all the way up into the clouds. So these are just some examples. Definitely get online and look and find something that speaks to you that you might be able to replicate, or find multiple elements from multiple designs that you want to try to use. But remember, we have a lot of words that we went over today and described those words, and use those when you're developing your design. Be able to use those words in your justification on why you use them.